Denver and Colorado Springs are 70 miles apart, and one of them could cost you $15,000 a year more to live in. Here's the trap that most people fall into when they move to Colorado. You see, they budget for the mortgage and they completely forget about everything else. Today, I'm making sure that that's not you. So if you're thinking about moving to Colorado, before you pack a single box, you need to know exactly what it's going to cost for you to live here in 2026. You see, every single week I get messages from people relocating to Colorado from California, from Texas, from the Midwest, all over the country. And they almost always ask me the same questions. Hey, Dave, what does it cost to actually live there? So today I'm breaking down the real numbers: housing, groceries, taxes, utilities, transportation, everything you need to know before you make the move. So let's get into it. Now, before we dive into Colorado specifically, I want to give you a baseline number to keep in your head for the rest of this video, because every percentage that I throw at you, it's going to be measured against this particular number. So here we go. According to the Bureau of Labor Statistics, the average American household spends about $6,400 a month. Now that's roughly $77,000 a year. And that includes your housing, transportation, food, healthcare, everything else combined. The average national rent runs around $1,737 a month, and the average household spends about $891 a month on groceries. So keep these numbers, in your mind, because $6,400 a month overall, $1,737 for rent, $891 for groceries. So every time I say Colorado runs a certain percentage above or below for the rest of this video, these are the numbers that we're measuring against, all right? So let's go ahead and start with the big picture. According to Rent Cafe's 2026 cost of living data, Colorado's overall cost of living sits at roughly 6% above the national average. So remember our baseline of $6,400 a month? That puts the average Colorado household spending closer to $6,800 a month, and that's about $400 more than the national household every single month. But here's the thing. That statewide number, that hides massive variation depending on exactly where you move to. Because the Denver metro area, that runs significantly higher than the state average. So you have a cost of living index around 110 to 128, depending on the source. At the higher end of the range, you're looking at almost $8,200 a month for the average household, nearly $1,800 above our national baseline. Now, Colorado Springs, that's a different matter. It comes in close to the national average, around 95 to 105, basically right around that 6,400 baseline that we talked about, maybe a few $100s either direction, but it makes it one of the most affordable major cities in all of Colorado, and that's according to data compiled by LifeCalc's 2026 Colorado Guide. Now, the mountain resort towns like Breckenridge, Vail, Aspen, they typically are going to run anywhere from 30 to 50% higher than the Front Range cities. And the Front Range is Fort Collins, Denver, Colorado Springs, Pueblo. And this is driven really, those price points are driven really entirely by housing costs. So when someone asks me, hey, is Colorado expensive? My answer tends to always be, well, expensive compared to who and what, and then expensive to where you are in Colorado. All right. So let's talk about the number one driver of cost of living in this state, and that is housing. Now, remember our national baseline, in terms of rent of $1,737 a month. Median rent for a one-bedroom apartment in Colorado as a whole runs around $1,500 to $1,600 a month, according to the 2026 figures from Consumer Affairs and Salary.com, which actually puts the state rent slightly below that national number. But that number is deceiving, right? Because it's going to blend less expensive markets like Pueblo with expensive markets like Denver and Boulder. So in Denver specifically, housing costs run about 11 to 16% above the national average. And that's according to Rent Cafe and Salary.com data. And that pushes that 1,737 baseline closer to $1,950 to $2,000 a month for a one bedroom. Now, Boulder It's even expensive. It's among the most expensive small cities in the entire country, according to LifeCalc's 2026 breakdown. So if you're buying instead of renting, and I always recommend running the numbers on both so that it makes sense to you. Expect a down payment of 15 to 20% of the purchase price, sometimes FHA 3.5%. And then, of course, you're going to have closing costs. And then, of course, you have property taxes and you're going to have insurance. So one thing that people moving here are often surprised by, and then it comes to the weather, it's hail damage. Colorado has one of the highest hail insurance claims in the entire country, and that's according to LifeCalc's relocation data. Budget in an extra $500 to $1,500 a year of additional insurance costs because of it. And that's just part of really life in Colorado. So here's where Colorado gets attractive, okay? And what I tell people. So don't let the housing number necessarily scare you off, because the tax picture helps offset it. You see, Colorado has a flat state income tax of 4.4%, and that's confirmed by the Tax Foundation's 2026 state tax rankings. Now that's it. There's no brackets, no phase outs. So whether you make $40,000 a year or even $4 million a year, everybody pays the same flat tax rate. Now that's actually lower than a lot of comparable states, right? So property taxes here are really low, around 0.5% to 0.6% of the assessed value on average. And that's according to both the Tax Foundation and AARP's 2026 Colorado state guide. Now compare that to states like Texas or New Jersey, where property taxes can run 2 or 3 times higher. Well, Colorado, makes out pretty good there. All right. So sales tax, that's where it gets a little bit more complicated. The state-based tax rate is 2.9%. And that's one of the lowest in the country per the Tax Foundation. But local cities and counties stack their own taxes on top. So when you look at Denver, the combined rate reaches around 8.8%. In mountain towns like Breckenridge and Vail, combined sales tax can hit over 11%. And that's according to Counties Tax Calc's 2026 Colorado Tax Guide. Now, one more thing worth noting. Colorado has something called TABOR, TABOR. It's the Taxpayers' Bill of Rights. It's a constitutional provision that limits how much revenue that the state can actually keep. And anytime there's a surplus, that money is to be given and refunded back to the taxpayers. So some years, that's been a meaningful check back into your pocket. So let's talk about the cost of living just day to day, all right? So remember our national grocery baseline. We were talking about how the national baseline is $891 a month per household for groceries. Well, groceries in Colorado are going to run anywhere from 2 to 8% above that, depending on the source that you look at. Rent Cafe, for example, puts it closer to 2%, which is roughly, $910 a month, while LifeCalc's 2026 data puts mountain communities, which is, we already talked about them being a little bit more expensive, as high as 8% above the average. So it's closer to $960 a month. That gap gets noticeably wider the further you get into the mountains, simply because of supply chain costs, getting products up into the high country. Utilities are actually one of the bright spots here in Colorado. According to Rent Cafe, Colorado's moderate climate means lower utility costs than a lot of the country, typically 5 to 15% below average. Winters need heating, no doubt, but summers, you can actually get away with not having much air conditioning. We don't have any humidity out here, so it does balance out. Transportation costs are fairly typical across the board for a car-dependent state. Gas prices hover, in the $3 range, but of course that's all depending upon geopolitical type of issues, right? And so when you have that type of things, you got to factor in commuting into Denver, factor in, parking downtown if you're living in the metro area, using RTD public transit. That can run about $250 per ride or about $100 for a monthly pass, but that's a nice option. And this is the part that I really want you to really want to emphasize, because Colorado isn't just one price tag. It's dozens of different markets. Denver runs the highest, obviously, among major metro areas. Now, we talked about how the mountains are expensive, and that's driven really in both areas strictly by housing. Colorado Springs, however, runs noticeably more affordable, often 10 to 20% less expensive than Denver overall. And that's according to iHall's Move 2026 comparison, with the biggest gap in housing prices specifically. So it comes down to housing. A median home spread of roughly 120 to 140,000 between the two cities, and that's per data collected by Zillow. Now, Fort Collins, interesting, we haven't talked about Fort Collins yet. It sits a little bit in between. It's more affordable than Denver. It's popular with families and remote workers. And when you get there, it might be an option for you. And then you've got the mountain resort towns, Breckenridge, Vail, Aspen even. That's where housing costs can run 30 to 50% above the front range pricing. It's beautiful, but you're paying a premium for that view outside the window and for that mountain, lifestyle, all right? So this is exactly why when someone tells me their budget, my first question is always, what kind of lifestyle are you looking for? Because the right answer in Colorado depends entirely on what trade-off you're willing to make between cost, home cost, lifestyle, commute. So let's go ahead and kind of like bring this all together, all right? So here's Colorado's cost of living in 2026 in one quick summary. And remember our baseline. The average American household. The average American household spends $6,400 a month. The overall cost of living, Colorado runs about 5 to 6% above that baseline statewide, with lots of variation from city to city. With the average in Colorado Springs to be about $1,800 a month higher in Denver than, say, Colorado Springs. So housing, the single biggest factor, especially in Denver, Boulder, and the mountain towns, that's the issue. That's where rent can run several $100s above our, 1,737 national baseline. Taxes, it's realistically genuinely favorable with a flat tax rate of only 4.4% on income tax and lower property taxes when you compare to other cities. Groceries and utilities, definitely slightly above our 891 national baseline, but nothing really dramatic. And the real answer to, is Colorado expensive? It depends entirely where in Colorado you're talking about. If you're considering a move to Colorado, whether that's Denver, the suburbs, or up in the mountains, I'd love to help you figure out exactly where your budget fits best and what type of home. A new construction home, for example, may make sense, especially in the metro area, because builders are generally providing lower interest rates with their preferred lenders. Moving further away from the metro areas may make sense in resale homes, as housing costs tend to be a little bit cheaper when you get into the country. So give me a call or text, or even shoot me an email, or you can schedule an appointment with me in the link in the description. Now, if this video helped you, hit that button and subscribe for more Colorado real estate content, because it does really help people find this information. And be on the lookout for more Colorado real estate videos each and every week. Hey, I'm Dave Michael. I am the House Wrangler with You1 Realty. Until next time, happy trails.